Welcome, listening audience and panelists. First, I'd like to wish the panelists a happy Registered Dietitians Day, International Women's Day as well. We're all women here today. I am Simone Hollis, Registered Dietitian Nutritionist, and we are partnering with the Bermuda Dietitians Association. I am from the Ministry of Health. Can I get the four panelists to briefly introduce yourselves and your practice areas? And also, still as I'm part of one of the panelists, I will say that I deal with health promotion, some policies, and also government and non-government consultations. So that's what I actually provide and bring to this panel. So someone can go first. Alicia?
My name is Alicia Johnson. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I work in the clinical setting, dealing mainly with patient care, patient education, and referring to an outpatient dietitian once they are finished in the acute care setting.
Sinead?
Hi, I am Sinead Salandi, registered dietitian nutritionist, and I work in private practice at Premier Health and Wellness Center, where I do the range of adult nutrition, specifically in diabetes management, reversal, obesity management, and everything from cholesterol, you name it. So it's quite diverse.
Thank you. Allison?
Good evening, all. My name is Alison Otterbridge. I am a clinical dietitian. I currently work at MWI's campus of BHB, so dealing with clients with coordinating our medical nutrition therapy with mental health, as well as disease treatment and management.
Thank you. And Natalie, our last dietitian. Natalie, are you there? Can you hear us?
Apologies. Yes, good evening. I'm Natalie Bean, and I enjoy promoting nutrition in the community. Freelance with projects, children, seniors, in-home. Yeah, so it's just a joy to be able to promote nutrition to the public and the community.
Thank you so much, ladies, for coming together. And I'm glad that we got this together at the time that we did. We wanted to celebrate Nutrition Month, Registered Dietitians Day. We also wanted to engage the community so that we can actually get out there and have this frank and open discussion. Our theme for Nutrition Month is nurturing the future. Accessible, available, and affordable and healthy foods for all. Tonight, we'll focus on sustainable nutrition and the importance of incorporating sustainable diet practices that can maintain the health of our population and future generations. This is a hot topic, right, ladies? Don't you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, especially with a lot of us feeling the pinch on increasing the food cost and the food and possible food insecurity on the island. It could be possible, but we don't know the numbers to be specific, but it's hard. It really is. So to the panelists, can we explain to the listening audience how sustainable nutrition and sustainable diet is important at this current time?
I would definitely say that sustainable nutrition as it pertains to all areas, environment, health concerns, social and economic backgrounds, as well as the economy solely for everybody, is all encompassing. So if we're talking about sustainable nutrition, we're talking about all of those things working together for the good and trying to provide, an environment that is able to move forward for generations and generations to come.
Thank you. And that is really, really so important that we start to look at those things now. So we talked about accessible, available, and affordable. If food's available, it's the availability that refers to adequate quantities of food of proper quality that we can get that's going to be supplied via domestic product or imports. And Bermuda imports the majority of its products. But when we talk about access for individuals, whether they get those adequate resources for obtaining appropriate foods for nutrition diets. So it's for nutritious diets. So it does make a big difference. And we want to engage everybody and talk about, what does that look like for sustainable diets to ensure that everyone can have some sort of food security, some they can have healthy diets that would help to encourage everyone to be as healthy as they can. What about sustainable diets, ladies?
Wow, I know in terms of a sustainable diet, we're consuming foods that are environmentally friendly, that not only benefit us health wise, but they help to benefit the environment as well. So those would be things like fruits, vegetables, nuts and grains, beans, peas, of that sort, which all together create a well balanced diet.
And adding to what Alicia is saying, also to protect the biodiversity of species. So, just to elaborate on fruits and vegetables, when we talk about sustainability in growing our own foods, you definitely want to have species of foods that are compatible with the current agriculture in Bermuda. When we look at protein sources as part of a healthy diet, which is to promote growth, and we know protein is important for growth, you want to look at the bioavailability of fishes in the oceans in Bermuda. So a healthy diet while protecting biodiversity for the soils and the ocean as well.
Yes, and also making sure that there's ways that we can, for me, for feeding yourselves, we have like the Grow Eat Save, which is actually the gardening program that we try to encourage people to grow their own food. We'd like to see even in different parishes, because if we can work together and become those small communities that we used to have, it would be so important in trying to engage everyone to be that community, because not everybody has to garden, not everybody has a plot of land. There's several different things that you can do, from container garden, raised garden beds, just in any little small things. Or even if we did it in communities, I know even for myself, when I was gardening, when I had too much, I just shared with others. So not necessarily it always has to be yourself. So but if we can get ourselves as a community and work on our food systems here, I think that would be great, because we all know, right, that the foods that Alicia had mentioned, those are the things that are most important, that we want to try to engage our population to be more plant-based focused, including more fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and not seeds, beans, and legumes. Yeah.
Yeah. And across the board, those foods, as far as a sustainable diet, nurturing the future, those foods seem to impact just many of the chronic diseases that over 50% of the population of Bermuda are experiencing right now. High blood pressure, diabetes, heart problems. So those foods are just optimal. They're high in fiber, they're low in saturated fat, they have zero cholesterol, which is a big point. Those foods all have zero cholesterol. So all of those foods can make a big impact on nutrition.
So what would actually be some of these affordable foods? Because when there was a survey done, it was done quite some time, but this is the reason why we started our gardening program, is that Bermudians stated the reason that they did not eat fruits and vegetables as much as the recommended 5 servings is because of cost. Does anybody have any guidance that we can give to the listening audience on how we can still meet those needs at affordable prices, other than gardening?
I would definitely say making a plan. Having an assignment, making a list, a grocery list. I always encourage clients to, in order to get a good variety of vegetables, to rotate vegetables on a weekly basis. So if you're choosing, 3 vegetables on 1 week, or 2 vegetables on 1 week, and then rotating for another 3 or 2 vegetables the next week, just to ensure that you're getting a variety of nutrients, but over time, as opposed to buying, a lot of the fruits and vegetables in one go, especially because they are likely to go to waste soon if you don't eat them all. So I always encourage clients to buy as they go. and buy fruits and vegetables based off of what they know they're going to be able to consume. So planning is definitely something that I would encourage anybody to do when going to the grocery store. Have an agenda. Make sure you know exactly, what you want to eat for that week, and then try to, incorporate it into your budget.
And what about that myth? That myth that everybody thinks that if it's not fresh, it's not going to provide you with minerals and nutrients. Like, what do you guys say to that?
And that is indeed a myth. I think sometimes people are very much concerned about the texture of food when it comes to fresh, because we know the truth is when we have frozen fruits and vegetables, most of these fruits and vegetables are frozen at the peak of ripeness. So they do have the same nutrition content as fresh fruits and vegetables. What does change in cooking or however someone prepares it is the textural difference. So being able to distinctly differentiate between, you're not losing any of the nutrients if food is frozen, if fresh fruits and vegetables are frozen, but the texture may change. Sometimes that can help it be a little bit more palatable. So persons know, even if a fresh fruit or vegetable is not available or it's more expensive, you can access a possibly slightly lower cost if it's frozen.
That's right.
And it also saves, right? So you use what you need and you put it back away, right? So even when it comes to canned items, yes, sometimes they use the salt for the preservative. The canned fruits, it's the high sugar content that's in those. But you're looking for the low sugar ones, or the no added sugar ones are going to be preferable, and the ones that are lower in salt. And you can rinse and you can drain those. The key is that they're going to provide the same nutritional content that you'll get from fresh, but you'll be able to store them a lot longer. And so I think that's going to be really key for debunking that myth that we hear so often.
And Simone, that's a great point you raised about canned foods and how we can go about eating them safely. And we have a question in the comments about what about sugar-free and diet foods. And when we're talking about nurturing our future and food sustainability, it's food sustainability of healthy diets. We're not just broadly talking about, hey, we just want food for everyone, but we want healthy diets to be sustainable. And part of food sustainability is ensuring that we have foods that are minimally processed or non-processed. So we have the question, what about sugar-free and diet foods? So when we look at sugar-free and diet foods, most times they're packaged. We have to look at what specifically are they drinks, are they candy bars, are they cookies that we're looking at? And we do have to say the truth that these foods are highly processed foods, and sustainable diets, and the conversation needs to highlight healthy eating and healthy diet, and a big part of that is minimally processed. So while the sugar-free and diet foods have their place in transitioning into a healthy diet, or sometimes foods as we can call it, we have to state the facts to the public that you need to be aware that these are highly processed foods, and part of a sustainable future, nurturing the future of the population, is making sure that you focus on foods that are minimally processed. They have their place, and they can be used as part of a healthy diet, but they still need to be moderated and identified, the differentiation of processed or minimally processed.
Yes. And those foods that are minimally processed, that are such a wonderful part of the meal plan, as Sinead and Allison mentioned, and Alicia touched on, making a meal plan with these minimally processed foods, which we also call staple foods, include, for example, potatoes, pasta, whether it's whole grain pasta, or these days they have bean pasta, grain pasta. You can also plan your meals around staples such as rice, brown rice, basmati brown rice, So those are called staple foods. And when we talk about these foods that are grown, these plant foods, those are the foods that we actually make a meal plan around. And those foods are also lower in cost. Um, the other day, I bought a package of quinoa. You know, it's one of the newer seed grains that's similar to rice, and it cooks similar to rice. And I bought a package of that, and I bought a package of dry beans, and I actually paid a little bit extra, and I bought a butternut squash. And so for a low cost, which was less than $30, I had a complete meal, which was enough to feed really more than 4 people. So with the staple foods that are fresh, they're unprocessed, they can actually go a long way to feed a family. And again, those staple foods, whether it's potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, pasta, those foods can go a long way as the basis and foundation of a meal plan.
Yeah.
And that's good to say. I mean, to talk about stretching foods, you can add beans to your meat. That'll stretch it. You could do more soups and more stews. And those are the things that would stretch it as well. But we do have a comment that is asked, how can I eat healthy if I don't cook? So Natalie, you talked about cooking, but someone's asking, how can I eat healthy if I don't cook?
I would definitely say I have a well-stocked pantry. I think that trying to keep sustainability at the forefront, trying to keep costs at the forefront, mixing in fresh foods with canned foods and frozen foods, all of them can come together to create a balanced meal. So having a well-stocked pantry, even for somebody who is not a huge cooker, I will admit I'm not a huge cooker, but at the same time, you can continue and you can have a nutritional or nutrient dense and balanced diet, with minimal input. Preparation is key, and having a well-stocked pantry, and knowing little recipes or little things to put together, like chili, for instance, is pretty easy. And I know that there's a lot of up and coming resources, like delivery, where they do your grocery shopping for you and have meal prep services. So just doing your research and finding the resources that are readily accessible, I think will benefit anybody who doesn't cook or isn't a chef in the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not hard, as you mentioned, to eat healthfully if you don't cook. I think those are great points. And also you can find some good choices in the frozen food section. We already mentioned the frozen vegetables that are in the frozen food section. They even have noodles now in the frozen food section that are already cooked. You just need to pour over a little bit of boiling water. It doesn't take much effort. And you can have a quick meal with very little effort in a short time. Yeah, so it can be done.
And the other thing I just want to focus is that the Eat Well plate that we actually focused on, where it talked about making half your plate those non-starchy vegetables, broccoli and cauliflower and carrots or salads, those types of things. Only choosing 1/4 of your plate with lean meat and the other quarter with your starches. And so, I mean, even if it is where you are, because we want to meet you where you are, right? So if you feel you need to go out and you're not cooking or any of those types of things, then you take one of those little black containers and half of it needs to be non-starchy vegetables. 1/4 needs to be your lean meat and the other quarter needs to be your starches, instead of reverse with the starches having the larger portion, and vice versa with all the meat. So make sure that it stays balanced, and that you can choose some of the healthier snack things. You can easily choose some fruits. You can choose raw vegetables. You don't even have to cook the vegetables. Don't even have to be frozen. You can have that, and then you can make quick smoothies using more berries than using a lot of really sweet fruits like bananas or mangoes or pineapples. So you can use those things. So those are always some of the options that you can use if you don't cook. But I will say, if you don't cook, the difficult part with that is that it doesn't actually aid in being affordable. Because even though you're purchasing in large items to make one item, you have leftovers that you could recreate and do something else. So it's always good to repurpose and recycle those foods that you have. Food is too precious at this point in time to waste anything. And even I had a conversation with my brother the other day, and we talked about, just the floret of the actual broccoli in the garden, but didn't realize, but you can eat the stem.
Yeah.
The actual the leaves, I'm sorry, not the stem, the actual leaves. You can actually eat those, and you can do roll-ups with those by adding meat or rice or something to them. So, try not to be as wasteful. If you have leftover potatoes, you can make that and put that in stews. If you have a rotisserie chicken, that can go for your salads, that could go in sandwiches, that can go in any of those stews that stretch. You just need a little bit of meat. You can put lentils and whole different things. So there's lots of different things that you could do. Crock pot cooking, because we're all very short on time as well. So yes. So the next question is, well, how do I eat healthy when I'm eating out?
Well, I would say when you're eating out.
Yeah, I think that go ahead.
Oh, okay. When you're eating out, you can always think ahead and plan where you would like to eat at.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, you're able to have a look at the menu before you actually get there, so you know what options are available to you. So you can go to a restaurant or any eating establishment. Just make sure they have a variety of items on the menu. So it doesn't have to be all fast food items. It could be salads, it could be pastas, it could be anything that can provide you with a balanced meal. If you're going to sit down, you can start your meal with a soup or a salad, so that can aid you in having more veggies at mealtime as well. I think Sinead was about to say something.
Oh, adding to what you're saying, Alicia, excellent points. And in terms of looking at a menu ahead of time, what that helps with in terms of food choices and linking healthy diets, food sustainability, to ensure that you're not malnourished or you're not choosing unhealthy foods. Looking at how foods are prepared, so choosing grilled foods rather than fried.
Mm-hmm.
So when you started your meal with a soup or salad, it's already low fat. And continuing into your entrees, you want to choose grilled and baked options, reducing sauces and such. And we also are looking at environmental impact, because just a simple example of something that has a lot of sauce in it, you have the grain, which is healthy, which we're promoting if you choose a brown rice or a sweet potato dish that has vegetables. If it's smothered in sauce, it has heavy cream, and heavy cream is linked to an animal product. And we know that animal products have a big environmental impact. So it really, when we look at a healthy diet, whole grains, plant-based, we're looking at such a bigger picture with health and protecting the environment from these lovely guidelines that you all are giving as well.
That's a good point. So I want to touch on the point with regards to, I personally talk about being plant-based focused, not being vegan, not being vegetarian, because Bermuda is one of those places where we have a high incidence of heart disease, heart attacks, high blood pressure, stroke, all of these things, in particular the diabetes. How does a plant-based diet or plant-based focused diet can help in these aspects? Even when we talk about obesity, our last survey in 2016 said 3 out of 4 Bermudians are considered overweight and obese. So how can being more plant-based focused, not saying that we're telling anyone to give up any meat. We know how that some of having too much meat, especially processed meat, and cured meats, and how all of those things can actually increase your risk for cancer and a whole lot of other illnesses and diseases. How does being plant-based focused help and assist? And the reason why we have our dietary guidelines as we do, with half of that portion requiring fruits and vegetables, and then whole grains.
So those foods. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good, Natalie.
Oh, okay. So I was just going to mention those foods. Number one, that fiber rich. It's filling. So you can't just naturally, you cannot eat so much. And it's an easy way
Natalie, I think you're frozen. Natalie, are you there? Okay, Allison, I'm sorry. We're just gonna wait till she comes back. Allison, can you just give um
Sure.
a feedback?
So what I was gonna say, and then just building on what everyone was saying with regards to plant-based focusing, you want to make sure that you're building your plate. So a lot of times, the natural way of us building our plates is we put mostly starch, a lot of meat, and a tiny little bit of vegetables. So definitely trying to reorganize the plate in the way how we present it, not only on just a breakfast, lunch, and dinner basis, but the way how we think and the way how we perceive food. So I always say, if we're moving towards a more plant-based diet, trying to incorporate, at least one meatless meal a week, just to kind of try to shift the focus towards that, because with we know that nutrient rich plant-based foods are going to help to decrease the amount of fat that we're consuming. It's also going to improve health outcomes as it pertains to diabetes management, cholesterol management. So just trying to shift the focus towards low fat lean meat options, and then incorporating of a more variety of fruits and vegetables. So it's all encompassing when you look at the picture and the perspective that people have with regards to how they built their plate. I think that's the most important part, because we all know that it's beneficial, but how do we now incorporate that into something that's able to be sustained, especially when we're talking about affordability and accessibility. So just trying to shift the perspective and build the plates one day at a time, or one meal at a time.
Yeah.
Well, I,
And
I, I want to just add in there with regards to being plant-based focused. We have the high fiber. That high fiber helps to better control your diabetes when you have high fiber foods. Really and extremely important. Having lean meats. So it doesn't have to be lean meats, but proteins, having those slow digesting things. We talk about those beans. They don't make your blood sugars rise very quickly. They help to these high fiber with fruits and vegetables and whole grains, not refined grains. These help to make you feel full. This can help with overweight. If you've ever made oatmeal, you can put a little bit of oatmeal in a large pot of water and you find you still have to add more. That's because fiber swells, right? So the 5 food groups, as long as I've been a dietitian, have always been the same. You don't have to have dairy foods, but you do need calcium. They're all classified by the nutrients that they provide. You don't need meat, but you do need protein. And you need to make sure that you're well-rounded. So these things with fruits and vegetables, they help to control your blood pressure with regards to the high in potassium. And those things, eating these foods in those ways can actually help with those illnesses and diseases and help to control a lot of the things that we actually see. But like we talked about with the accessibility, the affordability is choosing those foods that we can actually put in that'll be at a low cost. I just want to say someone has asked, do I have to cut carbs to lose fat?
To hit on that question, just something a preliminary to that is just remember that in nutrition we promote foods as groups. We also have the plate now, but we also keep in mind food groups. So one group is those staples, those foods that are rich in complex carbohydrates, which the body depends on for energy. All of the cells depend on carbohydrates for energy. So sometimes carbohydrates get a bad rap, but as Simone just mentioned, it's really those refined carbohydrates that have been stripped of vitamins and minerals. And the ones that we want, which the brain depends on and every cell of the body depends on, are the complex carbohydrates as well as the simple carbohydrates, unrefined from fruits. So those are very important and a part of one of our food groups. More than one food groups is a part of the fruit and vegetable group, starchy vegetables. It's a part of the beans and peas group, which is rich in complex carbohydrates. And so those are important food groups that we need to remember are carbohydrates that we really need. And will they help you to cut the fat? Most definitely. Because when you're eating more of those foods, naturally you'll get less fat. And I guarantee you, it's an easy way to eat more and weigh less.
Natalie, you touched on some things I don't think the public might not be aware, but what are complex carbohydrates? What are simple sugars? What
Mhm.
are starches? What are the refined grains? Like tell the listening public what are the foods we're talking about? Because those are some of the staple foods as well. What are you talking about when you talk about complex carbohydrates? Or anyone can answer if you like.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just get started on it. So we do have complex carbohydrates, we have simple carbohydrates, and we have refined carbohydrates. And I'll just start with the refined carbohydrates, and those are the ones that usually they take a bit more processing. So, for example, you would have brown rice, but when you strip away that outer coat, you have white rice. So it would be a bit more refined. And in the refining process, of course, you're going to lose some vitamins, some minerals, and that's, really the issue, and a lot of fiber. And
And that's
then,
why, when you have white rice, it always says enriched. They stripped it of some of its nutrients and has to be sprayed back on the rice so that you can provide some of the nutrients that are required, right?
that's right, that's right. And of course, they do the same thing. The potato, we have potato chips. It's just been um, deep fat fried, cut, it's been peeled. So a lot of processing. So that's just some quick examples of refined carbohydrates. And we all know cake, some of the cookies, which doesn't mean that you can't make some good, wholesome, healthy choices. But those are just examples of some of the refined carbohydrates. And then we have simple carbohydrates, which, and when we say simple, we're thinking of carbohydrate chains. And we won't go into too much detail about that. But simple carbohydrates are usually you think of fruit, apples, bananas, oranges, are those lovely foods that taste sweet, but they still have fiber and they still have vitamins and minerals. So those are simple carbohydrates. We call them simple sugars. And then when we say complex carbohydrates, we're thinking of long chains of carbohydrates. And those long chains mean more energy. They mean more fiber, and they're wonderful foods that will fill us up but be much much lower in calories. And some people think, okay, the potato must be fattening, but is it really fattening? No, the potato is a wonderful food that is lower in calories than something like a potato chip, which has been deep fat fried, or a potato that has been filled with sour cream and lots of cheese. So just the regular potato is a wonderful food. It's not fattening as
So it's
some people
usually the
think.
combinations of how foods are combined. And even with that high fiber and the refined grains, we're talking about the overweight, we're talking about the diabetes, we're talking about when you add in the salt and those types of things. Now that we're looking at different things like trans fats, we're actually trying to remove that out of all the products. So we were talking about saturated fat, but that trans fats are also harmful. So some of your food used to be fried and some of those things and those refried grains. So whenever we want to eat, we want to eat foods that are going to maximize the nutrient content that we get from it. And you can see it from eating from a lot of different colors from the food groups. Did we answer cut the carbs to lose fat? Like, do you have to? I know you answered a bit of it, Natalie. Do we have to cut carbs to lose fat? Do we have to?
No.
No.
Collective no.
What is important in terms of food, in terms of nurturing the future of food sustainability, is not having overnutrition. So adequacy, meaning how much is right for you. And we assess that based on your age, based on your height, based on genetics of male or female. So that is how we assess how much is right for you. And then we can go from there to know how much carbs is right for you. So rather than blanket, is carbs going to cause me to gain weight? Is
Right.
cutting the carbs going to cause me to lose weight? First of all, we want to know how much is right for me, how much is right
Mhm.
for you. because there can be an avoidance that can cause undernutrition. Because, as Simone said, these are carbs is brain food. Natalie talked about that as well. Why would we want to lose a food that the brain depends on, that all our cells depend on? It's not physiologically accurate to say, hey, let's just cut the carbs. And then we need to think, if we cut the carbs, what are we replacing it with? If we cut the carbs, does that mean you're eating more protein? Does that mean you're eating more fat? Where's the protein coming from? Is it more meat? When we look at food sustainability, we're looking at plant-based because these foods are cheaper. They are more micronutrient dense. They are more nutrient dense. So cutting carbs as it relates to food sustainability is not the wisest choice, but knowing how much is appropriate for you. If your concern is your health, if your concern is affordability for the family, because if you are the father in the household, the husband in the household, the man, you would eat a different portion than the woman. And you'd certainly eat a different portion than an 8-year-old. And you will eat a different portion than a 3-month-old, because a 3-month-old may be breastfeeding. So the amount of carbs differ within the family. And sometimes we just really want to know how much is right for me, how much is right for you. Simone, I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned earlier with the why is a plant-based diet promoted. And we spoke about the big nutrients, carbohydrates, fat, protein, but we also need to look at micronutrients. I like to call them the superheroes inside the body because they fight for us. Things like antioxidants for heart health and reducing risk for cancer. When we look at our metabolism, many times I hear a lot of persons talk about speeding up their metabolism by growing their muscles. So they go to the gym and they work out and they grow muscles, and they're like, yeah, that is how my metabolism grows. However, micronutrients found in food in concentration in fruits and vegetables and whole grains are really the catalyst, or they speed up our metabolism. They are so critical for our metabolic rate, or how we produce energy, how our body functions, if we feel tired, if we feel energetic. So if we want a future that is nurtured in sustainability, productivity, we want healthy children, we want healthy adults, we want them to continue legacies in Bermuda, we want them to have energy, we want them to have a healthy metabolism. So micronutrients, and when I say micronutrients, I'm talking about vitamins and minerals. So sometimes it's easier to go get a supplement. Most persons think that is convenient. However, as dietitians, we know when you purchase a supplement, your body uses a fraction of it, and a fraction of it goes out in your bodily waste. It is always more available, and you use 100% of it from plant-based foods. So if you really want to get your vitamin A, B, C, D, E, K, plant-based diet is the way to get 100% of that.
And just because you said that, someone was asking, how can I get 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day? How can you? I think we mentioned already about frozen. We mentioned about canned, rinsing and draining because of the salt. There's also dried. There's dried vegetables you might find sometimes, or dried fruits, as long as it doesn't have a whole lot of sugar on them. Very rarely you'd find them. So sometimes those things don't make it as palatable for most people, and why they probably won't purchase them. But you only have to eat maybe, a quarter cup of raisins, and with a whole box you have fruit to last you for quite some time when you choose those types of things of dried fruit. So like I said, it doesn't always have to be fresh for you to meet your nutritional needs. It could be powdered milk that you get. It could be peanut butter. It could be actually natural peanut butter with the oil on the top. So there's plenty of different ways. There's beans. There's so many different ways that you can meet those needs. To get the 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, and that's in total. So can someone give an example, just similar to how I mentioned it with regards to portions, how
Yeah,
someone can eat those
and
5 servings of fruits and vegetables a
yeah,
day?
and I think yes, one way that helps us to remember, well, what am I getting for the day, is we're thinking about meal timing. So what am I eating for breakfast? What am I eating for lunch? What am I eating for supper or dinner? So for breakfast, those who like fruit at breakfast, you may get 2 servings of fruit at breakfast, along with some people like to have a whole grain in the morning. That's a nice high fiber rich complex carbohydrate in the morning, which again is good for the brain, good for energy because you're starting the day. So that's those 2 fruits in the morning for breakfast. Or if you like vegetables, some people like to eat a dinner for breakfast, and there's nothing wrong with that. So you mentioned 5 a day, so that you might get your 3 vegetables at breakfast time or 2 vegetables at breakfast time. And then lunchtime, if you like salad, very easy. You may have 3 vegetables in your salad, and already you have your 5, and you haven't even gotten to dinner or supper yet. So it's really easy to get 5. And believe it or not, we actually recommend 9 plus fruits and vegetables a day. So there's really no limit. And why is there no limit? Because those foods, as was mentioned, they're rich in micronutrients. They're high in fiber, which fills us up, so we don't eat as much. So we just naturally, we don't get as many calories, but we're still getting what we need. And something just on that point, it's good to keep in mind, how much do we need? And you mentioned, it's different for different people. Well, one good point to remember as far as protein is, if you're getting enough calories, you will get enough protein. Sometimes we worry about protein, but in our developed country, Bermuda, it's very rare to be deficient in protein. Now, some other countries that may not have access, of course, we're talking about access and availability, but some countries may not have the access like we do here. Being protein deficient can be an issue, but if you're getting enough calories, it's rare to be protein deficient.
Okay, so thank you for that. I wanted to actually keep in mind so that people saw portions. So I wanted to know that half a cup of cooked vegetables is 1 serving, 1 cup of raw salad is a serving, a 1/4 cup of dried fruit is a serving, and if depending on the type of fruit you have, half of a whole dough banana. So even when you're eating that whole one, it should be half. 10 to 17 grapes would be a serving. Normally 3 ounces of protein would be a serving. 3/4 cup to a cup of beans could be a serving, and only a handful of nuts. So we probably eat a lot more than what we actually need. Even when it comes to those people who are lactose intolerant, there's other options. I know a lot of people are going on to a lot of plant-based milk alternatives, and they're using those, but there's still, some of the yogurts. You got to be mindful of yogurts, lots of sugar in yogurt, so you got to be mindful of that. But the nutrition is there, so you just need to be mindful in what you choose. And it's more affordable to buy the tubs than it is to buy the individual ones. So you can meet all your needs through all of those things. You can choose the powdered milk, and that would be that'll last a lot longer. Even the fat-free cream, and you can reconstitute it for your milk. So there's other options that you can choose. So I have an actual question here for Allison. Is that let Allison answer this one? What's the problem with gluten? I see so much gluten-free food.
So the thing is with gluten-free diet was originally specifically for those that had celiac disease. So that diet was created for clients that have a gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity or gluten allergy. So a lot of times when those types of diets, we call them fad diets, come on board, and they have shown to, let's say, aid in weight loss, similar to the ketogenic diet, which was made for the apoplectic client, it becomes a fad. So with regards to gluten, I would say that there's nothing wrong with gluten if you're not allergic or sensitive to it, especially when you're talking about affordability and accessibility, because those specialty products usually tend to range on the higher end affordability wise. So I usually encourage clients, in the event that they do feel gastrointestinal distress when they eat gluten, to get proper medical tests to make sure that they are making the correct modifications to their diet to aid in adequate digestion. But I will not say that there's anything wrong with gluten. The gluten-free fad, just like the ketogenic fad, has just taken off. And I think everybody would agree with me in saying that. But it's just a matter of trying to find the best and balanced diet for you as an individual. Not to say that everybody will tolerate gluten. I know that over time, more adolescents, more pediatric clients are becoming more sensitive to gluten. So I would say, in the event that you're starting to feel different symptoms when eating certain foods, definitely do your research and explore, talk to your doctor, definitely explore different tests and measures as it pertains to allergies and those types of things, just to make sure you're not overly restricting or under restricting and those types of things. So it isn't one size fits all. It's definitely, and that's why registered dietitian nutritionists take the individualized approach when as it pertains to our assessments, as well as our recommendations and interventions.
Thank you. Alicia, I want to ask you, how important is it to start my day with a healthy breakfast?
For that question, I would say it's absolutely important to start your day with breakfast, because it sets the tone for the whole day. So when we eat breakfast, it provides the fuel that we need to operate. Think of ourselves as a car. You're not going to go sit in your car and you have no gas. Your body's the same. So if you want to operate well throughout the day, you want to make sure that you're fueled up and your body has everything that it needs to operate. So I would definitely encourage you to eat breakfast if you can. If not, you can always take something on the go, have a quick peanut butter and crackers, granola bar, or carry a piece of fruit with you. I'd rather it be something than nothing.
Very good.
Yeah.
So I would say, to build on what Alicia was saying, I know that we also spoke about the fruits and vegetables, and something that I kept thinking about was those that are managing their diabetes. Definitely being mindful of carbohydrate content and making sure that we're not overeating carbohydrates at each meal, because we want to make sure that, with the balanced diet that you are consuming is working with your medications to make sure that your blood sugars are controlled. So the usual recommendation for those who are managing their diabetes is 3 to 5 carbohydrates per serving, per meal. So making sure that we're definitely being mindful of that, if you do have a concern for your blood sugars and those types of things, and also being mindful of under eating as well. So a lot of clients like, well, I ate breakfast, why is my blood sugar so high? And then when I asked what they ate for breakfast, and it was maybe, some cereal and some milk, and they didn't eat lunch until 3 p.m. or something like that. Those things are contributing. So we do recommend timed meals for those who are managing diabetes, consistent carbohydrates, and making sure you also have a balanced meal at all meal times.
Okay, so let me ask you this question as we're coming up to the final close to the hour. Should I try the keto diet? It's so popular.
I think first we should define what is a keto diet. So keto, when we think of the keto diet, we're really thinking of mostly carbohydrate content. And keto diets, and what I've noticed is they vary in carbohydrate content, but usually, if I'm not mistaken, keto is very low carbohydrate, typically less than 30 grams of carbohydrate per day. And minimum that is recommended as far as general recommendations for nutrition is at least 150 grams of carbohydrate per day. So that's a very low carbohydrate content. And again, I said, depending on what facility it is or what study it is, they have different cutoffs of where they define a keto diet. But mostly it is a low carbohydrate diet. So one point that we just mentioned is the body depends on carbohydrates for energy for all of the body cells. Especially it's the primary source of energy for the brain. So one just needs to keep that in mind when they're considering, is this something that I need to do? Or is there even another alternative that can work just as well?
Thank you.
I definitely would add to that and say you have to look at the history behind the ketogenic diet as well. So it was specifically created for those who suffer with epileptic seizures. So in keeping in mind that carbohydrates is the only macronutrient that fuels the brain, starving the brain and causes the brain to be active. In those clients that do have epilepsy, it was carbohydrates would cause epileptic seizures. So that diet was created to deplete the brain of that activity. So the same way how we get hangry if we miss a meal and those types of things is the same type of effect that most clients that are following a ketogenic diet have. And it isn't something that's sustainable long term. I do know that it has great effects with, weight loss and those types of things, but what type of weight loss are we really sacrificing? What type of weight loss is it? Is it where we're actively burning fat and building muscle, or are we actively losing muscle and keeping fat? So we want to make sure that we're focused on the proportions of weight loss and also actually fueling the brain.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So we have around about 10 minutes left. I have two more questions I want to ask you guys.
I think Sinead was going to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sinead, did you want to say something?
That's fine. But just to add to the ketogenic diet, in terms of its popularity, you do, as Natalie said, for persons, the reality is persons do it. And I think we do have a responsibility to address the people that do it. Doing so in a guided setting and very information based. So as Natalie say, what your healthier alternatives are. Food sustainability, nurturing the future. These foods are high in fat. So I always highlight to persons cardiovascular risk, high fat diets that have a high cardiovascular risk. So when you're making the choice for ketogenic diet and you're not epileptic, you also have to manage your cardiovascular risk. I would say the social history around ketogenic diet that I've observed in Bermuda is also someone in my family did it, so I'm going to do it. Or I know someone who did it. How are they doing it? What types of fat are they using? And sometimes they do unhealthy fats a lot. And that is what is obviously not sustainable for health, not sustainable for the environment when it has such a big environmental impact with a lot of animal-based with saturated fats, which easily get abused in a ketogenic diet. So you do, and a lot of persons have become carb avoidant, and as we mentioned before, vegetables contain carbohydrates and they also contain micronutrients. So we're missing out on micronutrients and you may be slowing down your metabolism even, and then you have fat loss, you have weight loss, as Allison mentioned. But what is happening to your metabolism and why is the fat coming back so easily when you finish a ketogenic diet? So when it comes to sustainability and healthy diets, the ketogenic diet would not be placed on the ranks of a sustainable and healthy diet. Do people do it? Yes. Do we want them to be educated? Yes. And do we want them to explore plant-based, whole foods, more sustainable diets? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have a question that someone had sent in, and they want you to just give them some foods that they should avoid, as well as what they should eat to assist with symptoms of menopause.
I can.
Flaxseed is one of them. They can eat. They can include flaxseed. Anybody else?
Calcium-rich foods as well. So you do have, we know one of the calcium-rich foods is milk. You have a lot of persons now who, as Simone mentioned, do more plant-based milks instead of animal-based milk. And the question is, well, does my plant-based milk have as much calcium as the animal milk? And most times, plant-based milks are fortified with calcium to match that of, and sometimes surpass that of animal milk. And it's not just from almonds or soy or rice. You have rice milks, oat milks. We have flaxseed milks as well that would be fortified with calcium, because in menopause, as you have estrogen levels depleting, it can affect the calcium in the bones. You have risk for osteopenia, osteoporosis, and such. So we want to protect the bones. Other sources, rich sources of calcium would be sardines with bones, dark green leafy vegetables. We're talking about plant-based, collard greens, kale,
Calcium.
dark green leafy spinach, and spinach can be fresh, it can be frozen. So when we're talking about sustainable, available, accessible for managing menopause and looking at calcium intake, you can definitely look at your dark green leafy vegetables. Then you can look at your milks, and you can look at things like fish, sardines with the bones in them that are calcium rich.
But definitely a balanced diet is what's going to be most important as well. Definitely doing that and maintaining exercise. As you get older, you start to lose muscle mass, and lots of things are going on at that time. So when they call it the change of life, there are a lot of changes that are going on into this new period. And so eating well and eating foods that are nutrient dense, eating whole foods and plant-based foods are going to be really important. We're now at 6:26. I have one more question because it's been here. What are the worst foods to eat, and what's the best food a person can eat? I guess as dietitians, we don't want to look at foods as individual like that, unless you've got a really significant health issues. We were talking about renal disease, and you have to change your diet. You have to eliminate specific types of foods because your body can't actually remove the waste and different things like that. But like I said, we really go ahead, Natalie, real quick.
Yeah. Well, I know real quick. Oh, go ahead, Alicia.
You can go, Natalie.
Oh, okay. I know I like to tell people when it's some of those foods that they really love, what is an alternative to those foods? For example, everybody knows maybe a typical burger may not be the best choice most of the time, but there are alternatives. Now there's bean burgers, if they just want to give it a try. There's oat burgers for those who want to try them. There's even burgers that are very similar to the regular burger. Alternatives, mac and cheese. Everyone gives mac and cheese a hard rap, but you can make a wonderful, wholesome mac and cheese these days. There's even a corn and quinoa pasta that works well. There's a cheese you can make using potatoes and sweet peppers. So we don't have to just give up all of those foods completely without, seeing, is there an alternative that I can make and still enjoy that type of food? Yeah.
What about Sinead? Do you want to answer that question? I'll give everybody an opportunity to answer really quickly just before we sign off. 2 minutes.
Best foods we can eat: vegetables. It's not, we need balance, but I'll be the one to touch on vegetables. High in fiber and lots of micronutrients. So we definitely want to keep, it's not the only best food, it's just one of the best foods. So we definitely want to keep vegetables on the plate, vegetables at lunch, vegetables at dinner. And if you can incorporate vegetables at breakfast as well, that would be a best option.
Thank you. Alicia?
I would say beans are a good option as well because they're full of fiber, good protein source, and they're sustainable. And that's what we're here talking about tonight. So definitely have some beans if you can.
And Allison?
I would wrap everything up to say balance. I would definitely say that, when we're talking about sustainability as it pertains to overall health and wellness and food experience and those types of things, balance is going to be the key. And then you're tying all of the things that everyone on the panel said. You're trying to create a diet that's going to be something that you're able to maintain lifelong, right? You want to make sure that you're not being overly restrictive where your food experience is impacted. And you also want to feel empowered by the changes that you're making to have and live well. So I would say balance. That's just me tying everything together and putting it out into the atmosphere. In order to be sustainable, in order to sustain a healthy life, you have to have balance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we talk about those 5 food groups. We stand on those 5 food groups. We meet you where you are, and we make sure that everyone can meet their nutritional needs based on those 5 food groups, because scientifically what those food groups state is that everyone can be significantly healthy by choosing foods that have those same nutrients. So thank you, panel. And listening audience, your questions were very engaging, and I'm sure it helped us to think fast on the spot. And I would like to thank everyone and have a good evening. And thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you.
wonderful